Wednesday, thank you, April 6, 2022. And I'd like to call the Executive Committee meeting into order. Could you please call the roll?
Bates,
Here. Here.
Berman,
Berman here.
Ford,
Present.
Davis,
Davis here.
Gums,
Gums here.
Kenyon,
Here.
Caius,
Guys present.
Martin,
Martin present.
Molina,
Molina present.
Sanchez,
Sanchez present.
Strathman,
Strathman here.
Sturgis,
Burgess here.
Tepe,
Tepe here.
Shepro.
Shepro present.
You're up. You have a quorum.
Very good, thank you. Ms. Wodnicki, would you please do us the honor? Pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of March 2nd, 2022.
Berman move. Caius second.
I have seconds. Are there any changes or amendments to these minutes? Seeing none online. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Bras, Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Sturgis, Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Davis.
Davis, yes.
Okay,
It
the
passes.
minutes are approved. Is there any public comment?
I didn't hear my name called. I wasn't
Oh,
paying attention.
Mr. Shepro.
Mr. Shepherd. Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. Are there any public comments? And I don't see any online. All right, very good. We now are going to the monthly financials. Mr. Onsick.
One, I had provided for you a written copy of my report for this morning since I have several figures to reference and thought it would be easier for you to have it in writing in front of you. And these updates are the result of continuing to work on closing the year and as we're nearing the final figures. So the first page of my report is basically a recap of the revenues by department within the general fund. And the change that took place since the last time I reported this was basically it's just reduced by $10,000 as a result of one of the final adjustments we make. So overall, we came out ahead in terms of revenue compared to budget by $11,337,000 in total. The second page then shows a recap of expenses by department. So it's comparing the budget to actual and then the resulting variances. I've sorted it in descending order for you. So you could see which areas yielded the most in terms of positive variance. They're listed at the top. So the total favorable expense variance for the fiscal year 2021 is $6.2 million. On my third page, I'm just recapping at the top there, the total revenue variance of $11,337,000 plus the total expenditure variance of the $6.2 million yields a total excess revenue over expenditures for fiscal year 2021 of $17,537,999. This is still not the very final figure. It's possible there may be some further adjustments, but whatever they would be at this point are likely to be very small. That section below this then where it says updated allocation of excess revenue over expenditures. This hasn't changed. I just thought it would be handy for you to have it in one place with these other updates. So the top portion shows what we originally allocated. Then we had that, and that's that $500,000 to the public safety sales tax fund for sheriff's vehicles. and then 3.1 million each to the Property Tax Freeze Protection Fund and Capital Fund. And then there were miscellaneous items that we put on reserve as a result of individual departments requesting the carryover savings for specific purposes. And then the bottom section is where we're taking care of allocating that additional revenue variance that was identified once revenue was near final. And that's moving, well, actually what this is indicating is that when we balanced the 2021 budget, we had originally thought we would need to use the 5,660,000 and the $2.3 million dollars from the COVID payroll reimbursement fund in order to balance the budget. Well, since we have come out so far ahead in terms of the budget, we don't need to use those funds. So this is proposing that they be moved back to the COVID payroll reimbursement fund. And then on top of that, we still have an additional $1,375,000 to allocate back to the Property Tax Freeze Protection Fund and Capital Fund to take care of that full $17,527,000 variance. So by moving all these things out of the general fund into the various other reserve funds, it prevents it from being absorbed into the general fund when we close the year. And so at this point, we have like $10,000 remaining that would be absorbed. And I'm just leaving that there for now in case there are other expenses that we identify that we have to post before closing the year. And if that $10,000 remains, the very final thing I'll do, as I was authorized to do in the resolution that was previously approved by the board, is move that difference into the Property Tax Freeze Protection Fund. I'll have an update on property tax revenue. I received the property tax computation report from the county clerk's extension office. And this is the final report that comes to us once all of the adjustments have been processed. And what this indicates is that I had originally budgeted $550,000 of additional property tax revenue for new construction. Well, the final figures indicates that we'll have almost $12,000 more. So just a little bit more for new construction will be added to our revenue. But in addition, there's a brand new revenue source, which is new to me, not new to all of us, as a result of legislation that was passed this past August. What this legislation does is it allows the county, well, actually it instructs the county to increase its tax levy by the amount of taxes that were refunded the previous year. So this way we're made whole because the idea behind it is that the previous year we had budgeted a certain amount of tax levy, but then as a result of court rulings or whatever types of adjustments took place, there were refunds that were issued last year. So we did not actually receive the full amount of property tax revenue. So last year, the amount that was refunded was $142,000. And this was certified by the treasurer's office. So we're instructed to add this into this year's tax levy, which at this point is already done in terms of being calculated and in the system as far as the tax extension office is concerned. And then from there, it'll go to the treasurer's office to actually issue the billing. So that would result in a total of $154,000 more in tax revenue than what we had budgeted. We also had some good news regarding riverboat proceeds. We received word from the Elgin Riverboat Casino that their annual contribution to us this year will be almost $5.4 million. We only budgeted about $2 million because that's what we received last year. This contribution represents 7.5% of the riverboat's net operating revenue after they add back depreciation and contributions and they deduct their capital expenditures. So basically it's driven by their net operating revenue, which was greatly improved over last year. One of the things I've just finished for this year also was the calculation of lost revenue that is eligible for reimbursement from the ARPA fund. That amount is $657,000. And this, because it's coming so late in the year, it's really not really practical to try to fit it into adding it into the closing of fiscal year 2021. So this will be something that would be, we can still do, but it'll just be posted in 2022. But actually that's consistent with what we did for the revenue recoupment for 2020. We posted that in 2021. So it's just a year later. And also we do not have the very final revenue figure, so we're not able to post the final amount yet. And the reason why it's so small is because we did so well and compared to budget and in comparison to the base year of 2019. I also calculated the payroll reimbursement. This is primarily for the public safety area, and these were, and then within that area, it's primarily the correctional officers who were dedicated to responding to COVID-19 within the adult correctional facility and maintaining an environment that would keep the detainees safe there from COVID and to handle COVID as necessary. So their focus, more than 50% of their time was spent focused on those efforts, which is why they were eligible for reimbursement. So the total there is that $10,469,000. There were also some small amounts of reimbursement that are going to be allocated back to various departments, but that leaves the bulk of it still available to be placed into the reserve as budgetary savings. And then as I was completing the lost revenue and the payroll reimbursement for this past year, I then went on to try to provide estimates for the coming years so that it may be of possible help for the ARP committee. And so that takes us to the next slide, which I think might be slightly complicated, but so I'll try to, I try to present everything I could think of on one page, so maybe that made it worse for you, but that very first column is what indicates how much we've either already calculated for revenue reimbursement, so that would be the 2020 and the 2021 figures, and then what we're estimating for 2022 and 2022 and 2023. So that would bring a total of lost revenue potential reimbursements of almost $30 million. At the same time, I looked at payroll reimbursement. So according to the sheriff and his projections, he really sees it continuing in the same way going forward in terms of the number of personnel that'll be dedicated to responding to COVID. And so I basically took their costs and increased them according to what we're anticipating to be increases for collective bargaining agreements. The reason for the jump between 2021 and 2022 is that 2021 figures still represent the cost of their wages before the collective bargaining agreement was reached. And so there's going to be retroactive payments that affect 2021, and those are not included in this figure. But this is all I was able to include at this point because that's all we do have at this point, and that would be what I can legitimately say is eligible for reimbursement. But going forward then, I did factor in what I think is a reasonable estimate of what the costs will increase to going forward. And so there we have another almost $50 million of possible reimbursements. And again, whether or not we're reimbursed, first of all, it depends on the eligibility, which I believe I've demonstrated here, but then it depends on the will of the board if you wish to use all of these funds for that, the ARPA funds for that purpose. So that would be a total of almost $79 million. The next, that middle section is what I'm trying to help you to see as far as like what the potential uses of these funds are. So with revenue recoupment, we do have most of the portion of the revenue recoupment would be going to the individual special revenue funds in which the revenue was primarily lost. And so this is an attempt to make them whole through use of the ARPA funds, so that they are not truly experiencing the lost revenue that they otherwise would experience, which would just further stress their revenue and the programs they're trying to operate out of those special revenue funds. But there is a remainder that does pertain to the general fund, and that is what I have in that middle column, remainder available for projects. So that middle column, we do not need that in the general fund because we're covered there primarily. We're primarily covered there. So this could potentially be used for projects. So that's a total of $7 million. Then if you go into the last column where it says savings potentially available for projects, what that is the payroll reimbursement savings, which can be used for anything. It can be used for balancing the budget. It can be used for projects. So I have that in its own separate column. And then moving forward into that very last section, what I'm trying to show you is that we have already used that $3.2 million from 2020 of lost revenue, but the remaining pieces are still available to be used for projects and potentially balancing next year's budget. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what I've tried to present to you here. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me and I'd be happy to answer them for you.
I think we have a question right now. Yes, Mr. Shepherd.
So, Joe, when, if at all, does a decision have to be made on these funds that are identified as potentially available?
Well,
Does that just carry over to the current year, or?
these are estimates. So really, let's see, that first lost revenue, obviously the one that for 2020, we've already made the decision. 2021, once that's finalized, which will probably, I would say, like within the next month, a resolution could be presented to the board to then approve reimbursement for that if it so decides to do so. But then the 2 other years, 2022, 2023, I mean, those are just estimates, just to give you an idea of perhaps what you'd like to keep aside when you're trying to plan out the use of funds or to determine what you have available for funds. So it's more for planning purposes. And then in the payroll reimbursement section, that final payroll reimbursement for 2021, that is one of the resolutions that'll be before the board this month, next week. So that'll be approved then. And then the other 3 again are estimates, and that's just for planning purposes. You don't need to make a decision, or then again, you could draft a resolution that would, formally set aside those funds and make known your desire to do so.
If we don't make a decision, how are they accounted for at that point? Just
Well,
again, as funds potentially available?
Yeah, well, they're sorry, I'm trying to think of the right words. These are potential eligible uses of the ARPA funds. So it's there to as something you can keep as your notes.
Over and above what's been previously committed.
Or nothing has been committed.
Yes, it's
Okay.
potentially, yes, over and above.
And I have a question about the property tax protection fund.
Yes,
You said $1,375,000 would go back to that fund.
yes.
What would the balance then be at your best estimate?
Oh, that's a good question. That brings me to my next page, last page.
Okay, I will withdraw the question.
May I
Oh,
make
yeah,
a
no,
question
Mr.
here?
Tepe? Yes.
the estimates that you have here for payroll reimbursement,
Yes,
which, as you say, is from the sheriff's department.
yes,
These costs are going to be incurred regardless.
that's true.
So it's a matter of, do we budget for it out of the ARPA funds, or do we budget for it in the general funds?
Well, they will be budgeted for in the general fund, and whether or not you decide to, what happens is if you do decide to reimburse for that, it then becomes additional revenue that, what it does is then if you do decide to reimburse those payroll expenses, what that means is that the budget for those payroll expenses is no longer needed. And so it becomes but the quote unquote budgetary savings that we can then put into a reserve to use for whatever purpose we wish to use it for.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is everybody feeling comfortable with what Joe has presented?
I have a quick question.
Yes, Mr.
Thank
Sanchez.
you, Madam Chair. Jill, with these numbers, the allocation to special revenue funds proportionate to share of lost revenue, that's what we did this past year with revenue recoupment. So that's not speaking to any potential uses for budget gap purposes. That's a big topic of discussion in the ARP committee.
No, this is not trying to forecast what the budget gaps would be. This is just trying to forecast what would be potentially available to use for that purpose. So that, like, for example, that $50 million could potentially be of payroll reimbursements could potentially be used for future closing the budget gap in future years.
Okay.
But of course, it only becomes available 1 year at a time. So you can only use what is available for that year.
And with this, the 2021 lost revenue, it's much lower than the original projection. And is that due to the unforeseen revenue increase that we had this past year?
It is, and then the reason why it starts to increase again in 2022 and 2023 is we're using that assumed increase of 4.1%. So we're comparing what's forecasted, which is more like 2% increase compared to what they're allowing you to compare against as a 4.1% increase, and then calling that difference lost revenue. So it's really just a result of the parameters that are used to do that calculation. It's not to show that we're necessarily going to be doing worse than we expected in those 2022 and 2023. It's just worse than what the government is allowing you to expect it to be.
So it's reasonable to assume the actual numbers will come in lower for those years?
I think so, but then again, I would see what I've done in order to calculate this is I took the 2021 actual figures, which, you know, are much higher than what we thought. So that was my starting point. And then from there, I projected out about 2% roughly in the remaining years, 2% increase. Well, you compare that to the 4.1% increase that they're allowing you to compare against. And that's where that 7.7 million and 13.6 million difference is coming from. It's a difference in percentage increases. So if I had used 4.1% as my projection for 2022 and 2023, and then compare that to the government's allowed projection of 4%, there would be 0. So it's just a difference in what we're expecting. So if you're expecting it to increase more than 2%, then that would bring down these numbers correspondingly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anything else? Yes, Mr. Shepro.
Yeah, so the legislation that you referred to, I take it that happens by operation of law. There's no discretion in the board to do one thing or another with that.
Well, no, there is discretion. And maybe I'm sorry if I didn't make that point clear. We were allowed originally a maximum of 4.1%, and we started out using that, and then we used it for the very first calculation. And then in order to be consistent, I was just using it going forward. But if you would like to change that comparison, I mean, that's certainly, I believe it's within your discretion to change it. I mean, you can lower it, but in the meantime, they also increased the maximum amount. I think it's to 5.1%. And so we could have the option to compare it against a 5.1% increase, which would even make these numbers even larger. But I didn't do that because I got the impression that you're not trying to necessarily use every penny for the county.
Okay, I guess my question is that, does something happen if we do nothing, or do we have to affirmatively say either, yes, we want to take the increase, or no, we don't want to take the increase?
case.
No, I think it's well, probably the state's attorney should weigh in on it to be absolutely certain, but my understanding would be it's whatever the calculation you choose to use. And the board approves of at the time is what is used. You don't have to like predetermine what it will be.
Okay.
Do you
Did I not-
understand? And I think we ought to wait perhaps till the ARP committee has perhaps their meeting and starts discussing this, because this may be in their purview.
Yeah.
And then, of course, approved of by the board.
Yeah, I confess that I'm still somewhat confused about exactly what all of this means, and I guess we'll sort it out later.
If my understanding is for 22 and 23, these are estimated numbers. We will not know the actual number until the audit is occurring for those years. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. And then whether or not we compare against 4.1%, a lesser percent, or up to 5.1% is another decision that could be made. For this purpose, I used 4.1% to compare against.
And then when we get to 24, when all of the audits have been done for 23, then we will know actually what money is left or not. After the audit is done for 23, because they'll be rolling over money, I would assume, possibly.
Oh, yes, yes.
Copy, please.
Yes, Mr. Copey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may offer an anecdote from my simple brain. Watching, I'm a member of a pension, and when on the annual basis, they'll project, and we're allowed to go up to 7.5% projection. And we never meet that goal with our investments. We get sound investments, CDOs and mortgage-backed securities and the like, and so on and so forth. And we end up, lucky to get 3-4%. And what happens when they make those projections out there and inject them into the books is that now it doesn't turn out as planned, and now you've got staff and more accountants on payroll, and this immense effort to put it back in the worms back in the can. And whereas if you just have been a little bit more conservative on your outlook, then you wouldn't have all of that problem, one. And two, if you did gain an extra 1% or 2% on your money, then great, So you win twice by being slightly conservative on your interest rate projection. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Copey. Yes.
Madam Chair, Surges.
Mr. Surges, yes.
This is kind of only because Tom just brought that up. 2 cycles ago, this board was kind of rattled when IMRF came and said, hey, listen, we're projecting investment revenues to be decreased, and that's going to cause this board to find $2 million to shovel into the retirement fund to offset. Now that we're kind of past that, I don't know if it would be Joe or Dale at finance, or how do we figure out, did we meet the expectations? Did we not meet the expectations? If their projected returns came in higher, do we get any of that money back? Again, we're not talking about a couple $100,000. I remember it to be a couple $1 million. And I'm just curious when how that works and what the true up is, and if there is one at all, or is that just, it is what it is?
Mr. Onset.
And you don't have to answer now. I'm just curious.
I do know the answer. First of all, the extra money that we did send in, that is not something that we get back. So that's right. It's just a contribution we made, and we don't get that back. But what it does is that when IMRF, what it does do for us is when IMRF calculates the rates that the county is required to pay. So every year they update the rates, so the percentage that we pay towards IMRF changes based on how well they do with their investments and based on, and the impacts of that contribution. So that contribution did lower the rates that we needed to pay, or that we were required to pay to IMRF the following years. So it did have a positive impact on us in that respect. And then because the economy and investments did so well the past couple of years, that also then brought in more funds to IMRF through investment earnings, which also then allowed our rates to be lowered. I don't have them in the top of my head, but it was like in 7 point something percent like last year. Now this year it's 6 point some percent. So they came down dramatically as a result of the earnings that IMRF experienced. And, you know, should it go the other way, our percentages are going to start going back up again. But it's all related. The percentages we pay is tied to how well they do with their earnings.
Only because Tom brought that up.
Yeah.
Only because Tom brought that up, it just kind of jogged a memory that, you know, that was a big to-do a few years back, and has that leveled back off. And it sounds like you're saying it has. Thanks, Joe.
And I believe that there has been oftentimes great pride that Kane County is almost fully vested for its retirement fund. But unlike the state of Illinois, we as a county are mandated to contribute that money. It's not an option. So we, if they say we have to contribute more, we have to contribute more. If we have to contribute less, we contribute less, but it is a mandated amount. It's not an option. Right. We can't play a shell game on where that money goes. So are there any other questions? I'm sure that there is going to be after we get a chance to review this, Joe, I'm sure that there's going to be other questions to you. And I have a feeling that the ARP committee is going to have a interesting conversation as we further understand the impact of these numbers. And I think hopefully on Sunday, we can all give a little prayer and hope that our economy stays as robust as it has been, so that we can make sure that we can do good work with our additional funds.
I do have that one last page to just show for you, which is just a quick update on what the balances will be. So the COVID payroll reimbursement balance, we started out the year with $5.9 million. And this is from CARES Act payroll reimbursement. So that's what started the balance. We're then giving back almost the $8 million we thought we were going to need in order to balance the year's budget. And then on top of that, we have the almost $5 million of payroll reimbursement that is in a resolution that's before you this month to approve, to be reimbursed from the ARPA fund and then to move it into this reserve fund. So that brings it up to the 24.4 million. And then we have what's already been used this year as a result of what was built into the budget and some of the changes that have taken place. And that brings the balance down to $20 million. And likewise, then on the Property Tax Freeze Protection Fund, we have what we started with, and then what we were adding into it. And that brings us down to almost $5 million at this point in the year.
Any questions on this? It's a lot to consume. Mr. Onsick, do you have anything else?
No, this is.
That was quite a bit. Quite a bit. With that, thank you so much. Well done. Give us a little bit of time to digest all of this information. Now, is there any old business? None? Okay. Let me get out. There is some new business that I'd like to share with you. Yes, yes. Stick over here.
Thank you very much.
And we have a couple of presenters as well. This is what is being handed out to you as a packet of information that I drafted for you. If there's any additions, I know Mr. Shepro is quite the constitutional expert. If he has any additions to this, please feel free to add them. It's a Word doc, so it can be simply added as an amendment to this or addendum. This is all the research that I was able to get done regarding.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
basically,
Yes.
have we received this report in email? Could we be sent this report?
Absolutely. We'll get it to you.
I was going to place these in their mailbox.
It's going to be also in your mailbox, but we can make sure some of it is electronic. I think all of it is electronic now. And we can get it out to you, Mavis. It's a good read. It is the history of the resolutions and ordinance and constitutional law regarding your compensation for elected officials. This is the last leg of our journey for the reapportionment. And once you set some of these salaries, not all of the salaries, but some of the salaries, especially the county board members, they may be set for the next 10 years. So it's a thoughtful process. You'll also be considering, as part of the county board, that does not necessarily reflect with the countywide elected offices, but for the county board, on what level you would like to continue to have your health insurance. Whether there's been questions by county board members that there shouldn't be any health insurance. There is an option to have individual coverage and family coverage. So this should be something that you should also consider, because it is considered one of your benefit packages, therefore compensation to go along with that. I'm not going to make any judgment call on that, but that is truly for your consideration to do. If you have any questions on the other information that's on there, we've got 2 other documents. One is, they're both done by the auditor. The other one is the salary analysis of elected officials in surrounding counties, so that you have some comparison to what other counties are doing. And then also in November, let me get this document. The auditor put together, as she does annually, the elected officials compensation report, and that was done March 18th, 2022 for fiscal year 21. So I think this will give you at least a nice background of decisions that were made. Compensation for some of our elected officials has not been increased for at least 10 years. The last one was brought forward in 2016 or early 2017 to increase compensation. And at that point, it was vetoed by the board and it was not passed. Yes.
I think I'm looking at that and I'm baffled by the way it's presented. It's signed by the clerk, it's signed by the board chairman, and it says ordinance failed. And I've never recall seeing an ordinance that didn't pass.
That was signed. I agree.
Signed.
I agree.
So technically it doesn't belong here. It's just illustrative of what didn't happen.
That's exactly correct. I tried to get as much information as we can. And we have, our state's attorney is going to be helping us out, go through some of this information. And we also have the chair of the Community Advisory Committee that has made recommendations, and she's, Ms. Klinkhammer will be up to speak in just a moment to share what she learned from their research, as well as Jamie Labrillo can help us step through the process. So I think.
Madam
yes,
Chair, Surges here.
Mr. Surges.
You had made a comment in the beginning of this that I'm just trying to reconcile. You had correlated this in regards to the reapportionment process.
Correct.
Is there something within that reapportionment process that requires this? Is there something again, I have never been through a reapportionment process. So I'm not clear as to how one correlates to the other, or did we just consider this an appropriate time to possibly review it?
Okay, here we go.
Good morning. I'm Assistant State's Attorney Dawn Truce. So the county's code specifically says that at the time of that at the time it reapportions its county under this division, the county board shall determine whether the salary to be paid the members to be elected shall be computed on a per diem basis, on an annual basis, or on a combined basis, and shall fix the amount of that salary.
When you say county code, you're referring to the Illinois county
county's
code,
code.
not our county
Yes,
code.
yes, correct. So
Chaparral,
by
sorry.
law, that doesn't mean you have to increase it, but it does mean that you will address it and look at it.
Okay,
So-
and I thank you for that because I had no idea on that or where this was coming from. So that really helps put things in perspective for me.
And then just an additional side note, it also says that the county board shall determine the amount of additional compensation for the chairman of the county board. So that is another thing that you shall review.
So on.
I have a question on that, though.
If I may, just as a follow-up, on the very beginning of this packet, it says exactly who you have to address at this period of time. So you shall establish for members of the county board chairman, the sheriff, the treasurer, and the clerk. Because they're all, except for myself, are all up for election this year. Compensation may be established, or you can wait until 24 for the circuit clerk, the auditor, the coroner, and the recorder. You can choose to do them all during this period of time, or just the ones that are up for election this year, plus mine. You can keep mine stable as it is right now, and then it can be reviewed, may be reviewed again in 24.
And Ken, just so I understood you, I don't mean to subvert. So this, Dawn, this was a state level thing that's baked in, not our county level thing. There's no perception by the public that
No.
you
that-
got what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Thank you so
This
much.
is not you all deciding that this is something you're going to do. This is something the General Assembly is telling you to do, that you shall do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you are, should we say mandated or to review?
To review.
To review,
Yeah.
not to increase, but just to review.
And then just to bring up another note, as long as I'm on that, it does the compensation, and I know the chairwoman included this on her sheet, but the compensation changes that if they're done, if there are changes, they need to be done by ordinance and resolution and at least 180 days before the beginning of the term of the offices whose compensation is to be fixed. So that's the county board chair, and then those elected positions. So that date is June 3rd of this year. June 4th is a Saturday.
Okay, so I had a June 8th, so it's June 3rd.
Yes.
So if everybody can correct that on their paper. Mr. Shepherd, you had a question.
Yeah, several. All right, so as I understand and read this, first, we are not, well, first off, the salaries for the officials who will be elected at the 2024 election, if we chose to set them now, can be changed anytime before 180 days prior to the 2024 election.
Yes, as long as
Okay.
it's done by that date.
Okay, all right. So whether we do something or not for those officials, it's not set in stone until June of 2024, whatever that date is.
Well, so yeah, if any salary changes that you make, and on a side note, the date that the county board's salary has to be changed is.
I'm only asking about the countywide election.
I know, is a couple days later, though. I just want to I'm sorry,
Yeah.
just to go, I want to clarify that June 3rd is for the elected officials, but we recommend doing them all at once by June 3rd, just because your start date of your term is the first Monday. So it is a couple days after, after the start date for the elected officials. But I'm sorry, Mr. Shepro. So I just wanted to make sure I clarified that.
So are
But
we?
any salary, yes, it could not, any salary that takes effect, it can't begin during the incumbency. So it would have, that salary change would go into effect after the next.
Okay, that wasn't my question.
Oh, then.
My
we would-
question is, if we were today set the salary for the county board chair for the next term, we can't do it today, but at the next board meeting, if we were set the salary for the county board chair, or the circuit clerk, or the coroner to take effect with the term commencing in December of 2024, we could change that anytime before 180 days prior to the 2024 election.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so with respect to the terms commencing in 2022, which if I am correct, is the county clerk, the sheriff, and the treasurer.
Yes,
Those will have to be set by the date in June of this year. With respect to the compensation of the county board, although it says it shall determine that on a decennial basis, it would appear that the other statutes indicate that you are not precluded from making adjustments within the 180-day requirement periodically. You're not stuck for 10 years with what you do. Is
No.
that correct?
that is correct. You could change it, after the next elections. They just wouldn't go into effect until the following elected term. The only thing I will say is if you change it now, everyone's salary change goes into effect at the same time because this is the only time in this decade that everyone's facing election. Then it gets staggered. And so if you make a change, half of you will be getting, half of the people who are elected or those elected will be getting a salary change and other people receiving the lesser salary until the next election.
Shepro, again, and I'm not advocating this, but I understand that some local governments like city councils, I think in St. Charles, adjust it so that nobody is making half the board or whatever it is not making the same. That is something that the board theoretically could do. Whether it's desirable or not is another question.
Oh, and that'll be, yes, you're right. And that'll be up to the committee that make those decisions. You can also, as you can see by some of the ordinances,
The committee that makes those decisions, isn't
And
the
then bring it
board make
forward.
that decision?
or the board.
And I
the
have one
committee can
more
make it and bring it forward.
clarification. Does the per diem versus, or the per diem plus salary, the per diem or just the salary, that decision, this is a question, not a statement. Does that decision need to be made now and it cannot be revisited during the 10 years?
I believe that needs to be, yes, now, although let me double check on that and I will get back to all of you, but that is my understanding.
I recall that the last decennial, and I don't know whether it was because we had to, but the decision that when the per diem was removed, it was never revisited. And I think that's why, but okay.
I believe that is true, but I will double check that. If I'm incorrect, I will reach out or send out an email to everyone.
Now, I guess I would conclude with an inquiry, Madam Chair. Is it your intention to have a discussion of this morning?
An introduction. an introduction.
Okay.
That's simply it.
Because I was going to say, I mean, we just were handed this. I understand the people online have not seen it. And there's obviously a great deal to digest, so.
Correct. Yes,
Fraz speaking.
Mr. Frost.
On the second page of this blue salary analysis of elected officials, under notables, I think it's kind of interesting. It says the Lake County does not have an elected auditor, and the county clerks in both Winnebago and McHenry also serve as the recorder. And it just kind of occurs to me, because this has been discussed a few times over the years, that there may be an opportunity for some restructuring that would allow us the funds to become more efficient in certain areas and be able to fund a county administrator. So I just think that that's something we should talk about. So I guess my question is, and you can get back to me on this if you don't know the answer, but is that, I assume that's up to the board too, whether we have those positions even, or can want to consolidate them, or?
So, yeah, let me look into that.
Can I?
Oh, yes, yeah. We've got the constitutional.
The
expert ready to go.
Constitution requires certain offices cannot be changed or abolished by the board. It provides, in the case of some, the recorder's office can be merged into the county clerk's office, and I believe that's been done in a number. Cook County did it. Has to be done by referendum, cannot be done by board action. Certain offices like the county treasurer cannot be eliminated or restructured.
And the sheriff.
Although long ago, Cook County, the treasurer and the sheriff, it used to be, could not be reelected. And that was changed by referendum. The auditor office can be made appointive, or it can be abolished. I think there's only less than 20 elected county auditors in the state of Illinois. And that also could be done by referendum. And there, the only impact would be is that if you were to do away or consolidate those offices, it would have to be done before the commencement of the new term of that elected official. State's attorney, I'm sure, will look into that, but that's my general understanding. If we were to put a referendum on the November ballot to say merge the offices that are eligible, that would take effect with the 2024 election. It wouldn't affect the term of office of anybody now serving.
That's correct. That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, now, if I may, and I know there's a lot of questions still to be asked, I'd like to bring up Ms. Klinkhammer, Mrs. Klinkhammer, and again, she graciously chaired the committee, which brought forward 3 individuals who gave recommendations to the board regarding their thoughts of where compensation should be. So welcome and thank you.
I got a bigger packet than all of you, and I think this goes back to the 1960s or something, but I was the chair of the committee of the Compensation Review Committee, and the other members were Mike Reed, who is the village president of Hampshire, and Mike Lee, who is the president and the CEO of the Kane County Teachers Credit Union. We were charged by the chairman, who, knowing that there was the 180-day timeframe that had to be adhered to, had asked us to look at the different salaries. I have to say that I was kind of surprised that between no votes and county-wide freezes, that there have been no raises for, I think we went back to 2008, 2006, and the elected offices had not had any raises. I know, raises for elected officials is always a hard thing, not maybe so much for the elected offices, but when you're talking about your own salaries, it becomes very hard. So are going to try and maybe make it easier for you with what we recommended and what we looked into. Normally, a municipality would do a compensation, comparable compensation study, which is kind of what the three of us did, knowing that a county and a municipality are different things. Some of the counties in Illinois, it's hard to compare because either population or just the way that they're run. So we just kind of tried to work with some numbers. So for the elected offices of treasurer, sheriff, and clerk, we came up with a 5% increase that would become effective December 1st of this year. And then on December 1st of the following years, have a 2% raise. And just commit to that for the 4 years. That was an interesting question. We did not contemplate putting anything in for the next election. So the people that are up in 2024, which you could do the same thing, you could set that same compensation for them. But we didn't do that. We didn't, not that we didn't suggest, I don't even think we ever discussed it.
No,
But again, if you wanted to do that for the next round, you would have to do it 180 days before the election of 2024. So now these people will be making more money than, I think somebody asked about when you, another reason I think the chairman brought up the elected, the county board compensation was because everybody is up at one time. But that is true, what Mr. Shepro said. If you want to stagger it, that can be done too. I remember in St. Charles, we did do that a lot. Although I don't think they've raised their compensation for their elected officials for many, many years either. So that is what we were suggesting with the elected officials' offices. And we just did it for the three that are currently going to be elected in November.
And the county board, the committee had a firm recommendation for the county board. If I
Yeah,
remember.
we had a lot of discussion. And I think if you did do a comparison of a lot of counties, you would find that $25,000 is a lot higher than any of the municipalities. Plus you have more people. We did do where, that comes to about $480 a week. And I know that some of the areas are bigger, some of them have more population, but it does come to representing an average of 22,183 people in each of the districts, if you take the 24 districts. And again, we're trying not to get into, when you discuss it, and I hope you don't either, about personalities, people, who you represent, the area you represent, how much work you do. I mean, that really, I know when we were in St. Charles, we did have a comparable community because we thought we should get paid more as elected officials. And when we came back and saw what everybody else made, we found that we made a whole lot more than most of them. $25,000 is most than most mayors make in Kane County. And again, it's not a full-time job. It's hours. Again, if with the health insurance, I think that was something that really, if you have a county that doesn't give your employees, part-time employees, health insurance, it's hard to justify. I was looking at a chart from years ago. And the benefits actually were worth more than the salary even. That was a time, I think, too, when there wasn't an availability of health insurance as easily as there is now with, once the Affordable Care Act came into being. I mean, there were times when you would take your health insurance through the county if you had a pre-existing condition. It's a very generous package. It pays, I think, 83% of the premium. And I know that somewhere along the line too, you did get rid of the pension benefit. But the health insurance benefit is worth a whole lot more than the pension payment was. So I think it's not, that's up to you, of course, but I think it's something that you probably need to look into. Just the salaries alone cost the county $600,000. And if you look at the money value of the benefits, it's almost as much as that. So that is just what we were looking at. I know it's a hard thing to do. So we did, if you want to leave it at 25,000, I mean, that would be our recommendation, that you don't go any higher. And like I said, just, I think you have to look at it realistically of, you have a board who has 24 members. And so anything you do is times 24. And that can get really costly. And again, to the detriment of the other elected officials who are, have people working under them that make more money than they do. And that's the way of an elected office, I think, in a county or sometimes even in a municipality. But we would encourage that you definitely, for the elected offices, start the cycle of yearly raises. It's hard with elected officials because you can't really do merit raises, because merit raises are called elections when you're elected. But we would really appreciate if you would at least do it for this cycle. And if you want to look into 2024 and set this parameter, going forward, that'd certainly be something to look into. But always remember that whenever you do this, you do have to adhere to the 180 days. That's the important thing. And I give the chairman credit for recognizing that last fall when she first brought it up. So.
Thank you. Are there any questions from Ms. Klinkhammer? Yes.
A couple of questions, Mayor. How many meetings did your committee have?
2.
Okay, I was at the last one and I recall there was a call for minutes and there were no minutes available from the previous meeting. And you mentioned that you did a comparison, I think you said, with other municipalities, but you didn't indicate whether you had done any comparison with other counties as to what they paid.
Those are all in here.
Oh, okay, but
Yeah.
you called out that you were comparing with cities and villages, and I wondered what consideration you gave to what other counties paid their board members.
No, I think we did. I mean, we looked at all the, but again, there's, with the different counties, some make more, some make less. The population is different. You're not necessarily, the apples to oranges thing.
That would be true for the
Yeah, I mean,
municipalities
like
as well.
the first thing, you always hear is DuPage County, but of course, they're a whole different, their population is higher. And then you look at somebody like Will County, whose population is probably a little less than Kane County's, and they don't pay, McHenry. And again, with the problem with other counties is that along the path somewhere, they have raised theirs or not. I I mean, it's again, the problem with salaries of elected people is you're leaving it in the hands of elected people. So you can pay them whatever you want. You know, we're giving them, we suggested a 5%. You can give them a 10% if you want. You can give them nothing. I mean, if you go through this packet, I mean, there were, I think, 2 times it was completely frozen, which meant nothing.
How did your committee determine the 2%? I mean, when I was at the meeting, I seem to recall the discussion centered on what the union contracts provided for employees. And was that what informed your recommendation for the elected officials?
Well, I think one of the, if you recall, we talked about a COLA, but kind of in uncertain times, I mean, that could be higher than we wanted it to be. I mean, again, you have nothing to go on other than.
And well, I presumably we had to go on the report that you submitted. That's okay. I have nothing further. Thank you.
Mr. Shepro and all, this was just a recommendation from community members for your guidance, for this, the committee's guidance, because I thought it was very important to follow my, what had happened previously during the reapportionment, and that was under Ms. McConaughey, Chairman McConaughey. So I looked at what she did, and I tried to replicate it as the appropriate manner, since that seemed to be the system to work with. So this was that recommendation. Ms. Winicki?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, Sue, you mentioned 3 elected official increases, the 5% increase. One was sheriff, and I think one was the clerk, and what was?
Treasurer.
The treasurer.
Those are the 3 that are up this.
Okay,
cycle.
and you didn't include the chairman in that then?
Well, because she's not up until 2024.
Oh, that's.
Yeah,
right.
these are the,
Right.
these would take
Yeah.
effect December 1st, 2022, the 3 people that are elected. So like I said, they would, you know, for the other offices that are making, I mean, $100,000 seems to be kind of what a lot of them were making, but this would only be, and that would be the staggering of, unless you approve now for 2024, which you can do.
I do have one more question for you, Sue. During your committee, did you take into consideration that by virtue of being an elected county board member, we're Forest Preserve commissioners? And under the Forest Preserve, we have several committee meetings. We have an executive meeting. We're responsible for taxpayer funds as far as purchasing Forest Preserve lands. You know, it's the taxpayers' money that help us do that. And so I was just curious, you know, that takes time as well as all the other committees that our county's on. Our county board members are on. So I'm just wondering if you took that into consideration.
That's up to you in your discussion. When you discuss your salaries, that you can bring out, you know, everything. We said, just leave it the way it is. That was our recommendation. And then, you know, that's up to you when you have the discussion, whether you want to leave it, whether you want more, if you can justify that, I mean, the county board hasn't had a raise in, I don't know how many years. That was 10. Yeah, it was 10 years too.
Yeah, and
So-
just FYI, I know we're not comparable population-wise to DuPage County, but at one time, the county board members in DuPage were Forest Preserve commissioners, and they chose to split the 2, and they give quite a large salary for the county board members, and it's the same for the Forest Preserve commissioners. So it's just, I'm just giving you
But you don't have to justify it to me. You have to justify it to the taxpayers.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, you know, instead of, you know, people are very cognizant, I think, of elected officials. You know, that's why I'm glad I'm not in it anymore to have to justify everything.
I get it, Sue.
But,
Yeah.
you know, it is hard. And I remember the last time when I was the mayor and we were trying to get a pay raise, and
Yeah.
again, like I said, you're all going to have your own opinions. I mean, some of you can't even believe that you get paid to do it, and then others of you think it's not enough, maybe.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm just making a statement to, anybody who's listening or
Mhm.
will view this video, just so that information is out there. So,
Mm-hmm.
but thank you for your work, Sue.
Yes. Mr.
Bates,
Martin.
please.
Hold on, Ms. Bates, Mr. Martin.
I
speaking.
have a comment that results in a question, I guess. I on a personal level, have always believed that we as part-time employees should not be getting benefits. We don't pay them to anybody else, and that's been my belief. And to that point, I understand, and I know that the vast majority of the board is benefiting from the health insurance that's available to us.
I don't think that's accurate.
No, I don't think it's accurate either.
Ms. LeBron.
Well, if it's not, then I apologize for the inaccuracy, but here's my question, which is perhaps less abrasive than my point. I believe I recall having been with other public bodies that at least in one circumstance, I recall that the insurance program was made available that the governmental program was made available to the employee, and they could pay that rate themselves and benefit from the plan, but that the cost was borne by the employee and not by the public body. And I would like to know if that's the case, which would kind of, in my mind, create a hybrid of being able to address the insurance issue in a way that would perhaps enable people to maintain the insurance, but do so at their own expense.
And Ms. LeBron is here, but if we can table that, and I'll bring her up, because she did provide a report in your packet about redacted reports. We don't know who is collecting insurance and who's not. And she'll be able to just give a quick overview of that. Ms. Bates.
I had a point almost like Mr. Martin's, which is I would like to know how many board members are taking benefits. I would guess not very many are receiving this this full medical benefit. I waived it myself, so I wonder if many have not also waived it.
Okay, we'll be able to address that in just a minute. Ms. Silva?
Yes, good morning. Actually, I have a couple of comments on that, and I'd like to preface that with the fact that I have never voted to raise my own elected official salary. However, there is another side to this. There are folks who would love to run for office, are highly qualified, but just don't have the means to devote the time, because it does entail a lot of time. As a new doctor, young single mom at the time, I probably would not have been able to run for office if there were not a salary. Do I feel that it is we're certainly blessed to have a salary, and certainly it's a good salary. However, we do have to consider the fact that some people can't afford to run and would bring a lot to the position, to the county, because of, like I said, their training and education and different things, but people have different circumstances in life. That said, given the pandemic, given everything, I'm not in favor of raising my own elected official salary. I would never vote for that. However, this is one that I'm going to have to think about, because I do think elected officials do take on a lot. And I know the countywide officials are full-time positions. So I have to think about that. But again, offering some salary is important, because people like myself at the stage in life that you're in might find it a little bit more difficult. Perhaps my earning potential at the time was pretty good, but having to dedicate time to this labor of love also sometimes costs us financially. So there is another side to the fact that we should or could consider offering salaries and benefits to elected officials, because not everyone has the same walk in life. And again, some of us wouldn't be able to afford it at the time were there not some sort of stipend for what we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Mrs. Klinkhammer? Yes.
I guess just kind of a wrap up thought. I stated publicly in the past, it was probably back when we raised the salaries 10 years ago or whatever it was, but that I would never do it without an advisory committee. So thank you for setting that up. And I'd like to thank the committee for spending all the time on it. And I do appreciate it's hard to report to a board about their salaries. So, I feel sorry for you, but thanks for your time and handling all that.
Thanks. Yes. Thank you very much, Mrs. Klinkhammer. Yes.
I know normally we do not distribute unapproved minutes, but given that this committee is, I think its job is done, I would ask that the draft minutes from the 2 meetings that they had be made available to the board members so everybody can see what actually was discussed and presented. I believe there were some information packets that were made available to them. And I think it would be very instructive for the board members to see what was actually said, done, and discussed.
Mr. Shepherd, I was just informed that the second meeting is indeed in your packet.
The second meeting. The draft, okay. And how about the first ones?
If we can hold and finish our, thank you to Mrs. Klinkhammer and to Mike Reed and Michael Ivy.
I
Appreciate
do
it.
have one more question for Ms. Klinkhammer.
Oh,
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Klinkhammer.
I was at the last meeting, and my recollection, but maybe it is wrong, is that with respect to the health insurance, you were making no recommendation, but you recommended that the executive committee set up a committee to consider the question of health insurance with the suggestion that maybe they shouldn't do it. And it was presented here as this was a recommendation. Maybe I'm just parsing details, but there seemed to be some confusion about what the actual committee recommendation was. Was it to review and consider, or was it to eliminate it?
It was to consider and review.
Okay, thank you.
That's what my understanding was, absolutely. All right, once again, many thanks. Truly appreciate it. Now, one more, because we had 2 questions on the floor about the health insurance. So Jamie Labrillo will come up and speak on that.
Good morning, Jamie Labrillo, Executive Director of Human Resources. If there were questions for me, did you want to restate those questions so I can answer you accurately?
I believe the first one was the report that you shared that's in everybody's packet who's here. How many people are on the board, not the countywide elected, but just on the board, are receiving health insurance?
So those are listed on the report. So each entry, each line on that represents a person who is on insurance. So
I have 12.
Yes.
Madam Chair, could you ask your secretary to send us these reports immediately? An email.
They were sent out to the executive committee during this meeting, so they're in your inbox.
Thank you, ma'am.
And there are 13 people who are receiving dental insurance. Correct? By your report.
Yes, ma'am.
Half the board receiving rather from individual insurance or family insurance, spouse and family. So there's 3 tiers. Any other questions regarding the health insurance? Yes, Mr. Martin.
If, and maybe it takes research as to whether or not we could create a program where we were entitled to the benefit of the insurance availability, but we'd pay for it with our own funds, if that is a possibility.
That's certainly a possibility. That is what we currently offer to employees who work between 21 and 30 hours per week. They are eligible to participate in the insurance at their own cost.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions regarding this from Mr. Labrillo? Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I would like now to introduce who is going to be serving on the compensation, the subcommittee. And Dawn can help me work through this to make sure that I'm following an appropriate protocol. The subcommittee of the executive committee who will be reviewing compensation because it has to then come through the executive committee for your approval. And the Cliff Surges is going to be chairing it, so everybody be gentle with him. Dale Berman, Ron Ford, Barb Unicki, and myself will be ex officio.
But Madam Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you are going to have a subcommittee, it's going to have to be an advisory or ad hoc, because otherwise, according to the Kane County Code, a subcommittee, one moment, please. The formation of a subcommittee requires a majority vote of the standing committee or county board and shall consist of 3 or more members. Additionally, there is no vote for formulating a subcommittee on the agenda today, so you wouldn't be able to go forward with that. So either you'd have to schedule a vote if you want it to be an official subcommittee. Otherwise, if you're just going to be solely appointing, then it can be an ad hoc or advisory committee. And then that is consistent with Robert's rules also.
Okay, very good, because this is the first I've heard of that, so thank you for this guidance. So Dawn, can you stay there for a minute so we have clarity? We can right now do an ad hoc committee so that they can begin to discuss with each other. At the board, which meets next week, could we then put a resolution in with this recommendation to have an official subcommittee of the executive committee?
Yes.
Good.
What's the difference between the two?
One's, I guess, one's.
Same, right? In the end.
I mean, is there really a difference or?
Get twice the pay.
You can't.
Actually, you can't get paid for that, but
So what is your recommendation, Dawn?
What's the right way to do this?
well, it's just the options. And as to a difference, I mean, there is not really. I
If
would
we do
say.
an ad hoc, Berman.
Yes, Mr. Berman.
If we do an ad hoc committee now, we could get started.
Yes,
Correct.
Otherwise, we have to wait.
I think
Right.
that is
So
the
that's the only
difference.
reason.
It's only till next Wednesday, so it's 6 1/2.
Well, yeah.
That is the difference.
So let's go consensus, because it is coming through the executive committee, so all of you have a chance to weigh in on this. I think we're all in agreement that an ad hoc committee should be immediately formed. Is that, I shouldn't say that. Do you all
And there can't
agree?
be a vote,
No, but just,
but I guess you could ask people's opinions.
yes, Mr. Martin.
I agree with your effort at establishing a consensus. I just didn't write fast enough. I want to make sure I know who you're appointing.
Oh, sure. It's Mr. Surges,
Yeah,
Mr. Berman, Mr. Ford, and Mrs. Winicki,
okay,
and myself.
okay.
And of course, everybody else is invited to pitch in if you so choose. Yes.
Step here. Do we get a say on the chairman of this committee? Just a joke.
That is my purview. All right, so I think, yes,
Madam Chair, just one thing. I'm not officially a member of the executive committee any longer, but I'd be happy to serve on this committee. Now, I don't know if that would make a difference. Because you're saying a subcommittee of the executive committee.
We have,
Ad hoc, though.
it's an ad hoc.
The ad hoc.
It's an ad
Okay.
hoc. So, all right, so now my next question, would you prefer it to be an ad hoc or should we move forward with the formal resolution?
Ad hoc.
All right, we got it.
The vice chair will note that the vice chair is not ex officio on ad hoc committees, which is either a good or a bad thing, depending on your point of view.
Probably good.
But nonetheless, your opinion is always welcome. Welcome and needed. All right, so we have officially established an ad hoc committee. Congratulations, Mr. Surges. More on your plate.
Well, you have established an ad hoc committee.
Correct.
The board doesn't establish ad hoc committees.
That's true, but together, working together, we're going to get this done. All right. Very good. That was a wonderful conversation. Let's go on to our next item. Let me put my materials away. If there are any other questions on this, we're ready to go. And Mr. Surges will convene the ad hoc committee soon. By June 3rd.
I see that deadline written
June
in
30.
big bold letters. Yes.
And when is the, I'm sorry, I was out for a minute. When is this ad hoc committee going to meet?
I will have a schedule put together by Friday in your emails. How's that? Just formed 30 seconds ago. Can you give me till Friday?
How's it going?
How's it going? Yeah. Do you have reports yet? No.
Okay.
This is government in action.
And the charge to the ad hoc committee, again, I'm sorry, I was out at a call of nature. The charge to the ad hoc committee is what?
To recommend compensation for the county board members and the elected officials who are going to be up for office. That would be the treasurer, the sheriff, and the clerk, county clerk, for 2022. That is the shall. The ad hoc committee may make similar recommendation for the officials, and I'm sorry, the county board and the county board chairman. You may make recommendation for the remaining elected officials that will be going up for office in 24.
And insurance?
And insurance, thank you, and make recommendation regarding health insurance. Thank you.
And is there a date for the committee to report back to the executive committee?
We'll most likely have to have a meeting of the executive committee this month because of, well, or in May. So we'll give us a few minutes and we will work that through, and perhaps you could make a report at the next week's board meeting, just to
Fine.
bring everybody up to speed.
Karen, if you could send that charter language to me via email, that would help dramatically. Keep everybody focused.
Okay, very good. This is once every 10 years, so it's hard to get everything ramped up completely because it's not something we do all the time.
Madam Chair, if I could ask one question, though.
Yes.
Ken, you were kind of saying, and Dawn, you were kind of saying like maybe half of the elected, like sheriff, coroner is up now, then the other half is up in 2024. Are we suggesting that we want all of those? Do we want a staggered tiered? Or are you suggesting that you want those all put together at one time? I'm kind of missing that.
That's really your decision. I mean, because nothing can go into effect until after the next election for whatever elected position. So sure, you could, if, you know, I know there are time constraints here, so maybe you don't.
So my next question might be to some of the more seasoned veteran commissioners. If you were around in the last 10-year cycle, how did we do it then? Were those staggered, or has it been to put them together?
If you look at the packet, they were all together.
They were together. Okay, that's what since I didn't get the packet in time to review,
Yes.
I just have a question. So is everybody in agreement on that?
It's
And
gonna be difficult enough. Make one decision.
No, well,
Spread the pain out.
You know,
Okay,
Okay.
Yes.
Yes,
Berman,
Mr.
here,
Watt.
this is not a 10-year thing. We can do this every 2 years.
You,
Not a 10-year thing. We can do it every 2 years.
My point being, if it hasn't been done, how has it been done
Okay.
historically?
All right.
It's in
And
the
are we
packet.
interested in changing that, or you have a flavor of that?
I think that can be discussed
Okay,
when you have that meeting.
understood.
All the documentation shows that it was all at the same time.
All at the same time. Thank you.
And sometimes it was approved, sometimes not.
Okay, fair enough.
It's a hot topic of conversation. All right, we have much left to cover. Does everybody want to move forward now?
Joel admitted totally.
I know.
We're on to a consent agenda. Mr. Sanchez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have two resolutions under the American Rescue Plan. Can I ask to move them both and then describe them, or go one at a time?
It'll be up to you.
Okay. Well, I would ask for a motion in a second to approve both for placement on the consent
Wait
agenda.
a second.
Okay.
The first one is creating the part-time position for administrative coordinator. We currently have Jenny Smith in our temporary assistant position, and we're creating a position so she can become an actual employee of the county for the life of this program, the American Rescue Plan Act, and also making budget adjustments for the program manager as well. And then the second resolution is clarifying a previous resolution to make it more specific, allowing the finance department to bring an employee on to assist in their work that would also be made available, who would also be made available for American Rescue Plan Act work. And those are the two resolutions.
Okay. Is there any conversation on this discussion on these two items? Yes, Mr. Shepro?
Jared, this is to resolve the jurisdictional line question about whether we can ask Ernst & Young for advice on something that arguably was not in their specific.
No,
No,
no, this is
just a move from to employee status.
yeah, for Jenny Smith, our current committee assistant.
Okay,
Administrative
then
assistant.
I guess I don't understand number two, because
The second one is a previous resolution that authorized the hiring of an assistant state's attorney and an employee for finance. The intent being to have them available to the American Rescue Plan Committee and the county board for that grant work. But also knowing that there's not always going to be full-time work under those guidelines. We wanted to make sure that they can also perform the other duties of the state's attorney's office and the finance department.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. Please call the vote.
Bates,
Yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford, Bras, Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Sturgis,
I'm sorry, are we voting on 1 and 2?
Yes.
collectively?
Correct.
Pepe,
Pepe, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Repro,
Yes.
Yes. Okay, very good. Excellent. Okay, the next one is county development, John?
We are asked to agree that we'll accept money from the Illinois Housing Authority.
Pepe moves.
Gums will second.
You have many seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll. Yeah, we have a second. Gums. Seconds.
Bates,
Yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Bras,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Sturgis, Tepe,
Pepe, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Shepro.
Shepro, yes.
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 Passes, very good. Executive, Mr. Shepro, could you please lead that for us?
I think that I am not really in a position to address those, and possibly they could be better presented by others.
Would somebody like to present this, Mr. Berman? Do you want to, can you lead us through these budget adjustments? Or I can,
Yes,
thank you.
I'd like a motion to approve 1 through 4 of the executive consent agenda. And if we decide to take one out, we can amend that.
Well, let's start by taking out number 1, Shepro.
All right. Any others? We have a motion to approve 2 through 4.
Tepe moves.
Caius, second.
Seconds. Any discussion on items number 2, 3, and 4? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Bates. Bates. Berman.
Berman, yes.
Yeah, please come back to me.
Ford.
Ford, yes.
Yes.
Gums.
Yes.
Kenyon.
Yes.
Caius.
Caius, yes.
Martin.
Martin, yes.
Molina.
Molina, yes.
Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes.
Strathman. Strathman, yes. Sturgis. Tepe.
Tepe, yes.
Davis.
Davis, yes.
Shepro.
Shepro, yes.
You're up.
Yes.
Bates.
Bates, yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, item 1, the authorizing the position of part-time administrative coordinator. I'm sorry, authorizing fiscal year 2022 budget adjustment for the finance department, $40,235.
Moves.
Okay, very good.
Motion to approve?
I think we need discussion right now.
We need a motion.
A
first.
motion to
Motion
approve.
first.
Motion, I didn't hear a second.
Brad, second.
Yes.
Now we have a motion and a second. We can discuss.
No, thank you. Yes.
Question, Madam Chair, you and I had discussed moving this back to committee. I sent an email out yesterday with additional information on this. And that I'd like that moved back to committee at this time.
Is that a motion?
I'm not sure chronologically how that works, but that is a motion.
Motion to table to the committee would be in order.
Motion to re-refer to committee.
Okay, yes.
Second, Shepro.
All right. Is there any discussion on this? Yes, Mr. Martin.
Yeah, I'm in favor of the referral, but I think that if I understand the issue correctly, what we're talking about is not the economic changes, but where the money should come from in our budget. And I know that there are some employment
John, my intention
relative to
would be
this, and I
that,
would like to have a just kind of a consensus that we're supportive of the ultimate result. The question is, how do we properly lodge it within our system?
I think you're accurate in that statement, yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sanchez here. I'm not sure what the goal of sending it back to committee would be, simply because my understanding is that this is just the formal resolution and budget adjustments reflecting the consensus that was given to our finance director at a recent meeting. Am I wrong on that?
That's my understanding also.
My understanding as well. Perhaps we should bring up Mr. Onsick and he can explain this once again.
Yes, I'd be happy to explain it, but I want to be careful that it's nothing regarding the specific personnel are mentioned in open meeting. But I would just like to clarify that this resolution has nothing to do with the payroll department, absolutely nothing to do with the payroll department. This has to do with the finance department. And so to move it back to committee to have a discussion about payroll it doesn't make any sense because it has nothing to do with this specific resolution. This is to restructure the finance department. It has nothing to do with the payroll department. There was already money in the budget for the payroll department changes. That has already been done. Those changes have been implemented. There's no going back and undoing it or changing it. what this is talking about is the changes for the finance department and providing the budget for that.
For that position.
for
That's
the
correct.
Positions within the finance department.
And my understanding is that there are two levels of conversation. One is this one with finance and the other one is Dark. And that discussion is something that we still need to move forward on what to do with the payroll department. So this is separate from this discussion. This is separate from. Not.
Davist with a question. So
Yes,
just
Mr. Davist.
to clarify, the structural change is not moving some personnel payroll in this case from under the finance department to somewhere else?
Correct.
Is that
It
the
is-
structural change we're talking about?
It's alluded to, but that is not in this resolution.
Correct. These are structural changes involving the finance department excluding payroll. So it doesn't, this resolution has nothing to do with payroll.
Okay, all right, thank you, thank you. My
So,
mistake.
so for the time being, payroll remains in the finance department.
It's.
The two positions in
That's
payroll
correct.
remain.
There's absolutely no change for
Okay.
that discussion at all on this. Absolutely not.
Okay.
That's yet to be had.
Thank you.
Bates, please.
Hold on, Ms. Bates, Mr. Teppi.
Madam Chair, Teppi here. I know you and I had a private conversation about this, and I was involved in a conversation a week or so ago about this. My understanding on this matter is this is a specific department that has a situation where employees have been given offers or promise or potential offers to go elsewhere. And we have had that throughout the county in various departments. We've had several departments come and say, you know, we're losing people because we're not paying them properly. I've used the phrase, kick the can down the road. We need to be able to address this particular issue. And personally, I think it's inappropriate for us to address them individually through emergency type petitions. And that's what I object to. We need to have a structure to be able to be competitive with salaries and to be able to handle that without everything being treated as an exception. And that's what I have concerns about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Martin. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Bates, and then Mr. Martin.
So is this the same issue as Mr. Sturgis addressed in an email yesterday about creating a new position of to keep this one employee from leaving? Is this that issue?
This resolution does not address that issue.
Does not address, that is separate from.
Okay.
It's
you.
related to, but separate from.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Martin.
Based on the clarification that I think, at least that I feel I've had in this, I think I alluded to the fact that I would support moving this back to committee, but I'm changing my mind and I will vote against sending it back to committee because I think it's important to get the issue resolved today.
Thank you. Mr. Shepro.
Shepro, I guess now I am somewhat confused as what the purpose of sending this back to committee was, and perhaps my second was ill-informed. Could we have a clarification of what the intent or purpose of sending it back to committee would be?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Absolutely.
So
Mr.
my understanding of this in executive session at the Finance Committee, I was not comfortable, knowledgeable, maybe it's my shortcoming and not understanding, where we had conversations, we seemingly mixed the words payroll and finance intermittently within that conversation. We gave consensus during the executive session of the Finance Committee and did not solidify that with a vote afterwards as to exactly what it was we were moving forward. In retrospect, coming into today, and I'm struggling to pull it up on my computer, but the resolution is for the restructuring of the finance department. And I don't believe that in that executive session, we discussed any such restructuring. We talked about making some emergency increases in salaries because some key employees may have been offered a position someplace else. So to me, I'm failing between a restructuring of what? I've seen no restructuring. There was no model, there was no presentation, there was nothing brought to us. All that was brought was we need immediate money into a situation for a shortcoming, which I believe everybody gave very clear consensus that those employees are valuable and we do not want to lose them. But to vote with language that says this is a restructure of the finance department, we're voting on what? I will challenge anybody that's sitting here to say, I'm sorry, I didn't see a restructuring. That's nice language, and I appreciate somebody putting it in there, but I didn't see that. So my point of moving this back is to say, I would like some clarity between the payroll component, which I am advocating for returning payroll to human services, versus the finance department, which I'm understanding these guys are overworked beyond belief and we need to get them more people, more help. But I don't think that that's been laid out yet. And my point to move that back to finance is to say, if you're going to use the term, we're going to reshuffle the deck on this, then let's do that in earnest so that we totally understand this. And to Mr. Teppi's point, we're not just throwing money at a problem, but we've identified a cure, that's sustainable. So that's where I'm going with this. I mean, and again, I don't want to die on the sword here. And I do want, John, to your notion, these employees are valuable and we need to come to the plate and do everything we can. But to simply just throw money at it without having a higher conversation about what this might look like and reorganizing, that's what the resolution says. And I've not seen that, so.
Mr. Onsick?
Yes, in the executive session, I presented to you, I passed out my proposal and it showed the difference. It showed their current positions and the new position titles with the new salaries. And the resolution spoke of it as a restructuring. That's what I presented to you. I don't know how much more clearer I could have been. I gave the new titles, the new salary amounts. That is what I presented.
Yes, Mr. Shepro.
Well, okay, but I guess what I took away from that last meeting was a concern expressed by Mr. Surgis and others as to how that fit into the overall plan that I think, Mr. Teppi has alluded to, of not dealing with this on a department by department basis. Is that accurate, Mr. Surgis?
That is accurate.
Okay, and that seemed to me, as I understood it in the discussion I had offline, was that was the reason for sending this back, is to consider it in the light of the broader picture and not as a ad hoc one-off response. And so I guess I would persist in saying I think it should be sent back to committee for that discussion.
If I can remind the board, when we had talked about doing an overarching review of compensation and efficiencies within the, to contemplate hiring a consultant to help us with that, the mandated services study, along with combining that with the business study, that was postponed. And you wanted to see that at a later date. So if this conversation is what we're having right now about
They need to expedite this portion of that.
that particular overarching review, that is not going to happen most likely until later on this fall. Yes.
Is it is it appropriate to move that this discussion be moved into an executive session this morning? I mean, I don't know where I stand in
I'm
Robert's
getting
Rules
very,
of Order,
I think that may be,
but we're kind of tiptoeing around issues here, and I don't know if it's appropriate to, if it's appropriate, I want to move that we.
You
into
hold
executive
that.
session.
I'd like to hear what Mr. Berman had to say.
we've got Mr. Sanchez and then Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sanchez here. In referencing the concept of we should be focusing on the overarching plan as opposed to a short-term solution in one part of that plan. It's presented as an either or scenario. I look at it as a both and. We need to be working on both the big long-term plan for updating all the salary and compensation structures and addressing any short-term immediate needs that are emergent and that do require attention from us more quickly. Waiting until the end of fall would not necessarily suit our purpose at this time. And again, I will repeat my comment from earlier that this is just a formalization of the consent that we gave in closed session.
Okay, Mr. Berman.
Berman here. I think Mr. Anzek's presentation at our finance committee was very clear. I think it spoke exactly what he wanted to see happen. So I think questioning that now is, especially by the finance committee members, is not accurate.
Davis with a further comment.
Yes, Mr. Davos and then Mr. Martin.
I don't think I disagree with any of what I've heard, but I think kudos to Mr. Sanchez. I think he expressed it pretty well that this is, we do have a one-off ad hoc sort of problem that requires some immediate attention, but it does give rise to many other questions, as Mr. Tepe pointed out, and a greater overarching long-term solution is all, of course, something that we want to pursue. But I think it's safe to say that we should act on what Mr. Anzek has presented to us and take care of the immediate problem right now, and then move on to doing the rest and have that portion of it go back to committee.
Never happens.
I agree with the last two speakers, and I'd like to add to that the fact that this, in fact, was presented by Mr. Anzek as a long-term plan for his department. This was not something that, how do we patch a hole for today and move on for greater decision-making. This was presented as a long-term restructuring of the finance department. And on that basis, I'm comfortable with moving it ahead today to do exactly what Jarrett said. We need to be judicious in how we handle this stuff. This is not only an immediate problem with which we're presented, it's also an immediate solution on a long-term basis for one of our departments, so we can put a check mark in and say, okay, finance, now we've put to bed, we can deal with other departments as they come up. So I am, as I said, not supportive of sending it back to committee. I'd like to vote on it today and move it forward so that we can put this matter to bed in a constructive way.
Okay, I think we're ready to call the question.
I agree with all that was recently said, and we're talking about a overworked department, and I can't remember the last time Mr. Anzek asked for something and strongly encouraged it. So I support moving forward with this.
Okay, very good. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Point of order, this is to send it back then? Because don't we have?
No.
We have a motion on
We
the
have a
floor to send it
motion,
back?
motion to send it back, correct. Thank you.
Based on what I'm hearing, I'll remove that.
I'll concur.
Concur. Okay, very
Oh
good.
my God. We've made progress.
Clarification, we've removed the motion to send it back to committee?
That's correct.
Right.
Oh my,
Thank you.
that's good.
But Madam Chair, I would comment though, Mr. Berman, I don't ever want to be put in a position where I'm made to feel as if I can't ask a question. So if something was asked in finance and I'm not satisfied with that answer, I don't want anybody to question or make me feel as if I can't ask that question again or ask for clarity. So, I mean, just to say that, it was asked and answered last week to move to the next committee and this is the next committee, I am questioning certain things. So I don't know that that's appropriate, but to say it was inappropriate, I don't know where I'm supposed to ask the question then.
Thank you. Okay, are we ready to call the roll? This is to, you want to read the,
Approve the resolution.
This is to
1 through 4.
approve the resolution to move forward to the county board.
correct, correct.
Into consent.
To consent.
Shepro had asked that it was off consent. Did you still want it off consent at the county?
No,
board?
no, I took it off of the
Today.
omnibus vote today when we were going to vote all 4 at once.
So on consent. Bates,
Yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Froz,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Sturgis,
Sturgis, no.
Pepe,
Be no.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Shepro,
No.
Pura.
Yes.
Passes.
Passes. All right, before we leave the executive, there is going to be robust conversation, no thoughtful conversation regarding the concerns of where payroll should be. And we're going to be meeting with finance, Mr. Berman and I. We're going to be, of course, bringing human services together with finance to talk about the modeling. We will be looking at other counties and seeing how they have done it as well, both pro and con, and then eventually bringing that forward to this committee for your consideration on which way it's going to go. Because historically in the past, from what I've been told, that it was indeed in finance. Then because of personnel changes and gaps in oversight, it was moved to human services and where it is there now.
Madam Chair, you have that reversed.
That's correct. No, it went from finance to human services. And then because of personnel changes again, it was the stewardship went back to finance. So that is my understanding of how it's been. We'll have all of that documented with other research so that we have the facts on the table as we move this forward. Okay. Okay, very good. Mr. Berman, Finance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have 4 items in the finance. I'd like to have a motion to approve the 24 on the consent agenda.
Caius move.
Sturgis, second.
If you request to read each of the 24 and select any we'd like to discuss, or we just move on the motion.
Haven't we, excuse me, Caius?
Yes,
Haven't we
Mr.
agreed
Nelson.
that we, in exec, we would alliterate each one of the, just 1 through whatever?
Yes.
Dale,
Beginning with,
Could probably combine 2 through 5.
proxy reader?
pardon, Mr. Frost.
You could probably combine 2 through 5 as just budget rollovers.
All right. All right, starting with item 1, authorizing contract for health insurance broker consultant to the tune of $108,000 a year for a 2-year term. Item 2, amending item 2, 3, 4, and 5 that are amending the fiscal year budget rollover of funds. Item 6 is the authorization accepting fiscal year 22 NACCHO MRC RISE grant agreement for $75,000. Item 7, authorizing release of general fund contingency budget for new positions filled during the first quarter of the fiscal year of 2022. $654,291. Item 8, authorize the fiscal year 22 budget adjustment to fund completion of the transition audit, $3,500. Item 9, authorize an additional fiscal year 21 year-end allocation related budget adjustments. $17,548,399. Item 10, authorize reimbursement ARPA fund of payroll expenses for public health and safety personnel responding to COVID-19 public health emergency. Reserve of resulting budgetary savings and corresponding fiscal year 21 budget adjustment of $10,464,679. Item 11, ratify an emergency purchase affidavit for the purchase and installation of furniture at the DeKalb Workforce Development Office for $39,273 reimbursed by the U.S. Department of Labor. Item 12, authorizing a contract for King County Asbestos, Lead and Mold Consulting Services. It's an RFP for a 3-year term. Item 13, authorizing the second contractual contract extension available for King County Elevator Preventive Maintenance Services. $3,436, $35,389 for a 1-year extension. Item 14, authorizing professional service for consulting and project management for Information Technology Department of $200,000. Item 15, authorizing contracts for security cameras and building access control systems for $750,000. Item 16, authorizing contracts for outdoor wireless installation services, microwave network infrastructure for $150,000. Item 17, authorizing expenditure of funds for computer hardware, software, and service, an annual thing at $900,000. Item 18, authorizing execution of a master intergovernmental cooperative purchase agreement and other documents necessary to participate in a purchase cooperative with AT&T and authorizing the purchase of telecommunications services under said agreement for Kane County, $300,000. Item 19, amendment to the Kane County Code, Chapter 19 subdivisions, setting up new fees. Item 20, authorizing a contract for continuum of care support services of $30,000. Item 21, repealing resolution number 16-13 as amended and authorizing the payment of Office of Community Reinvestment Program expenses for the general fund working cash in instances where the funding agreements or reimbursements are delayed. $600,000 to $1,200,000. And item 22, amending the vacation policy within the King County Personnel Policy Handbook, having to work with paid vacation time. And item 23, amendment, County Code Article 6, Division 3, Section 2-221 with respect to cooperative joint purchasing through government agencies. And item 24, approving the 2022 claims paid for February of $6,970,114.45. That completes my agenda items.
A lot of money. All right, any discussion on these items?
I'm going to vote no on 23.
Okay, you'd like to pull off the consent?
Which item was that? Which?
Number
23, take 23 out?
All right, so
We're voting on 6 through 22 and 24.
all right. And
Was Mr. Shepro, were you withdrawing, were you asking the 23 be off agenda?
off agenda?
Or you just voted?
I may remove it at county board, but in the meantime, I'm not removing it today.
Okay, so
Just for separate.
doesn't have to be
Okay.
removed
Yeah.
from the
Okay, it doesn't have to be removed
24.
now.
I guess that's right. If you want to, well, but okay, if you combine it with the others, I'll have to vote no on all of them. That's all right. Just let's get it done.
Why don't we, if you want to, why don't you just suggest pulling that one off and that can be voted on separately?
Because my concerns may be ameliorated before the board meeting, in which case it would remain on consent.
So we're voting on 1 through 24 right now,
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
And,
Removing 23.
Right.
okay, but if you're going to vote against it, then it's not a consent agenda.
No.
Well, then none of them are consent agenda. Isn't that the purpose of?
Well, no,
consent
no, we vote. It's a majority vote.
It's
puts
a
it on the
majority vote.
consent
It's a
agenda.
majority vote.
The executive committee will vote presumably, with one no vote to put everything on consent. That doesn't take it off consent unless somebody says, I want it off consent.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. then.
Okay.
Okay. I defer to your expertise.
Not discuss 23? We discussed 23 and
No.
We don't.
No.
Just vote.
Because he may change his mind within a week's time.
I have to have a discussion with the state's attorney about that.
okay, good enough.
All right, I think we're ready to call the question.
Yes. Did you say Bates?
Bates, yes.
Yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
yes.
Froz,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, no.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Sturgis,
Yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Jepro,
Shepro, no.
you're up.
Yes,
Passes.
it passes. All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
I don't know if she heard you.
Ms. Molina, are you ready?
Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't hear you. Yes, Judicial and Public Safety has 2 items we'd like to place on consent agenda for next Tuesday's meeting. The first one is proclaiming April 10th to the 16th National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And the second is declaring the retirement of K-9 Pharaoh of the King County Sheriff's Office. We also request both of these. I believe our sheriff would like a presentation of the retirement, and then we have a proclamation of the Telecommunicators Week. I move both of these.
Any discussion?
If we vote down number 2, does he have to keep working?
You have to provide
Insurance.
treats.
Nugget will share.
A 2% increase in treats.
Proud of speaking, the sheriff's presentation will be at full county board then.
Correct.
Thank you.
I hope we get to see Pharaoh. I hope he's there. I think it'll be a robust meeting because we'll have the 4-H.
Yes.
Yes, so we'll
That's
have,
if board members will step forward and volunteer to take them.
yes, all right.
That difficulty,
Okay.
Mr. Ford, you,
I'll talk to you after the meeting.
All right,
My name.
we'll have,
What?
I sent my name.
okay.
have that separately.
What are we voting for? I'm sorry. Caius?
Yes,
This is to vote these onto consent agenda?
yes, correct. Yes. All right. If no other discussion, clerk, please call the roll.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Froz, Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Sturgis,
Burgess, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Jepro,
Shepro, yes.
you're up.
Yes.
Passes.
Very good. Mr. Tepe.
From Public Service, Tepe here, have one item to authorize an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Batavia and the county of Kane for administration of raffle licenses. May I have a motion, please?
So
Sanchez
move,
moves.
Surges.
Is there any discussion on these raffle items?
Was that Sanchez Ford?
Yes.
Yes. Aye.
Surges Ford.
I think
Ford?
Sturgis got in there first.
Have it, whatever.
We're gonna defer to each other, so.
Okay.
Sturgis
All right.
Ford.
Are you ready? Let's, is there any discussion on this item? No, if not, clerk, please call the roll.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Frost, Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Sturgis,
Burgess, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
Travis,
Davis, yes.
Repro,
Present.
Pura.
I'll vote, I cannot vote because
sorry.
I'm a resident of Batavia. I'll abstain. All right, Mr.
Fraz.
Fraz.
I'm happy to wrap up our meeting with an unusually light transportation agenda. I have 5 items and I'll move all 5.
Shepro seconds.
Item 1. Thank you. I'll ask for a second. I'll move, item number 1.
Want to do them one
This-
at a time, and I'm sorry.
This approves our Adopt a Highway applicants. We have 2 new
Exuberance, got
applicants and 7 renewals. Item 2 approves the purchase of 4 replacement snowplow attachments. This is with Henderson Products for $67,796. Item 3 authorizes the application for US DOT RAISE grant. That's acronym RAISE. And this would help fund certain capital projects that fit the criteria of the grant. Item 4 approves a contract for construction. This is $5,351,161. This is with Plody Construction. This is for our annual 2022 resurfacing projects throughout the county, multiple projects. And finally, item 5 approves a phase 3 construction engineering services agreement. This is with V3 companies in the amount of $1,298,176. And this is for the Bliss Main Fabian realignment and intersection improvement project. That's all I have.
Oh, excellent projects. Any conversation? Yes.
Anybody that wants to run for this office and think that things get done quickly should look at the Bliss Road intersection, which somebody can correct me, but I think it's been almost pending for the entire 7.5 years of my.
Yeah, well, we have
Time on this
we have a
board.
brochure and it's called It Takes Time, and it's, about 5 years. In KDOT's defense, we were ready to go last year, but we had an opportunity
This is
for
all
some.
intended as humor. I understand about the federal money coming in.
We did wait a year because we had an opportunity for some additional funding, but it's a go this season.
And I want to note that Mr. Martin is leaving before completion.
He's,
And I have a euchre date at 3 o'clock today.
Caius, yes, and on that note, his part-time job, which I can guarantee you, Mr. Frost could vouch for the part-timeness of the job that he's been doing the last. Kudos to him and to the other board members who have their part-time job and do well.
I agree. I agree.
you.
It's a job of great passion. All right, clerk, please call the roll if there's no other
Bates?
discussion. Ms. Bates?
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Berman,
Berman, yes.
Ford,
Ford, yes.
Frost, Gums,
Gums, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Martin,
Martin, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Sanchez,
Sanchez, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Sturgis,
Burgess, yes.
Tepe, yes.
Davis,
Davis, yes.
Repro,
Shepro, yes.
Pura.
Yes.
Passes.
I don't believe we need any executive session. No, I think we're good. Are there any committee reports?
Yes.
Ford?
Thank you, Madam
Microphone, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to announce that on April 22nd, after our Jobs Committee, we are, as of right now, still attend to have our first roundtable luncheon. I will give you more details at our
county board meeting.
Good, good. That's excellent. Wonderful. Anybody else? Yes.
Just three quick comments. Vern, Jake had reached out to me from
Name.
Surges. Commissioner Tepe, Vern had, Jake reached out to me from the VA, unclear as to where he's supposed to report to for this month. I told him, feel free to report
stop
to
down
Human
and talk.
Services, but the intent is to put that back under personnel, and I just want to acknowledge that phone call, and whatever's decided is, you're all wonderful people.
He would send a notice that he should come to public service.
Okay, super.
I'll double check.
Perfect. Carl, just a thank you for the emails concerning the situation or the possible presentation on Tyrell Road. I appreciated that him and Tom putting that information together. Then I had mentioned earlier, I received an email, I think we all did, regarding the kayak adventure tour. That is, I gotta be honest, one of the coolest things I've seen come out of the Forest Preserve. So that is,
Looking. then,
I
man,
know,
there's a
man,
lot of
I am
cool-
excited for that. So
Tomorrow, the senior stroll, 10 a.m.
that's it. That's all, Madam Chair.
Davos with a quick one, since we're,
Oh, yes, Mr. Davos, you want to go on the kayak adventure as well?
well, just with a nod to the nature announcement there, I want to take the opportunity on behalf of the Forest Preserve Foundation to remind everybody that you really do need native plants in your life. We've sold quite a bit. We're actually in the black, but we're not to the finish line yet. And we want to put up a tower for osprey, fish hawks to some of you. So buy some plants. Thank you.
Where do you buy the plants?
When is that? Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Oh, where'd
Here's
you
your
buy the
opportunity,
plants,
Mark.
Faust?
You can go online to the Forest Preserve District website, and you will find a tab there for that will direct you to it.
Plant sale.
Okay.
Plant sale, yes.
Jeffro, I
Yes,
just
Mr.
want to
Shepherd.
point out that the word kayak is a palindrome.
Is what?
Oh, thank you, Mr.
You can
Shepherd.
paddle it forwards and backwards.
Right.
Madam Chairman, we do have the young people coming to the next meeting, and we're having a hard time getting volunteers to come with the 15 young people. So I don't know what it is now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, can I add to that? Also, and I talked with the U of I Center, and the luncheon is not at the U of I building, the Extension Center this year for the first time. They're having a luncheon on the fairgrounds, I think in the new building, and we'll call it the new building. It's maybe 10 years old now. but-
20-year-old new building.
The 20-year-old new building, but just so everybody knows.
Okay, it'll be-
Jeffro, I recall we were advised to respond to the board office,
Correct.
and
I did.
have you seen the list?
No, that's this morning.
Okay.
I
Go
will
up there.
have,
I responded to Jane.
Jane,
I will
yeah.
have Jane send
Jane.
out
Yeah, I
reminders. and We'll
responded to
print
Jane.
out the list.
Slow response is what the problem is.
I understand. There's a sense of urgency right now. I know you're all part-time and
Yeah, part-time people.
but, please, if you have any time before the meeting to meet everybody, and that's going to be at 8:30 in the morning downstairs, or is it?
That's where they gather, and we go pick them up.
Okay,
And you can take them on a tour of the building.
take them on a tour, give them your
Oh,
wisdom and
we're in the
insights.
county board office. The sheriff is usually a real popular one, but
Yeah.
because they want to get out a free jail card.
And it may impact the Forest Preserve District meeting, which it comes right before that. So I think if they'd like to come to the Forest Preserve District meeting,
Yes.
they'd be welcome to do that as well.
We don't turn anybody away at Forest Preserve.
Yes, I know. All right, so we'll keep tabs on all of you and make some phone calls and encourage you to participate. Okay.
Mr. Kenyon moves we adjourn.
Wait a second. We should notice attendance in person makes the meetings go better.
Shorter.
That's true. Personal attendance.
Thank you for that. So, Mr. Shepherd, I don't think it's appropriate for you to put words in your associates. Speak for your associate.
Here we want, it's before noon.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.